Carolyn Doobie here. What's the play for today? Well, today I'm going to deal with a very ugly page in one of my cardboard art journals. This page to me is incredibly hideous, but that's okay because I just see it as an oops, an outstanding opportunity presenting suddenly. And when I've got an oops, it just means I get to play some more with it. So here's the ugly page, the one on the left. It's got some pink, it's got the brown of the cardboard still there. I'd glued down a spark of artspiration on there, and the whole thing, well, it just kind of felt to me. So what I'm doing is going to add some color to it. Now, what is this paint that I'm dipping into? This is how I use up the last little bits of paint left in the tube, is I just cut the tube off, and then I can just dip my brush right in and put all sorts of color on. Now, you've probably figured out that there are actually some parts that it turns out I did kind of like from that first layer, although they looked kind of hideous altogether. But those are the parts I'm not painting over, like the word become and a little bit of that blue spark of artspiration paper up there, and the word disco that was in Discover. Now, this journal, by the way, is a cardboard journal, and you can see how to build one of these and different ways to play within them in one of my free workshops called Permission to Play, and I'll have that link down below for you. The other thing is the sparks of artspiration, and I talk about those in that free workshop, but they're something that comes free in my newsletter. It's something that you can download and print out and use in your play. Now, my plan was to just work on the ugly page that was on the left, but once I had paint in my hand and then something about the other page called to me, so I decided to add another layer onto that. And so I'm adding just a bit more color and then wiping it off with a baby wipe on top of the worlds that I'd rubber stamped using one designed by Mary Nasser. Now, one of the perks of being distracted by something near you and playing around with that is it gives the other layers a little bit of time to dry. Now, this isn't quite a foolproof way of doing something because after I got done putting some color on there, I was pretty much enjoying that aqua color, so I ended up adding it back on the original page that I was working on, and now that paint's all wet again. And you think that it would take a good 4 to 5 years for anything to dry the way I react to it. If I have to wait more than a nanosecond, I'm just not that patient when I'm playing, so I will just keep working right on top of wet paint. That doesn't bother me one bit because waiting for something to dry, well, that's just painful to me. I'm going to put some more pattern and color on here, and I'm going to be using a stencil called Rectangular Patterns for Play. Now, this stencil has 4 different patterns on it, and I'm just going to pick part of one to put here. So I've got some orange paint that I am very generously applying, and if I don't want something to smear or run, I should be very careful. But clearly, I don't care if anything smears or runs here. I'm just having fun putting down some patterns. And now I'm going to do some delicate stenciling. Just do a nice little straight line of those little boxes going along the bottom. It's just so dainty when I stencil this way. Well, and let's do a little more dainty stenciling and just try and get 3 little boxes up in this corner. And guess what? I couldn't do 3, I've got 4. Now, looking at this, the word disco is kind of fading into the background, and disco should never fade into the background. So I'm going to take a pen and just very loosely go around parts of it just to make the letters pop a little bit more. Now I'm going to live on the edge because the paint isn't completely, totally dry, but it's mostly dry. So after I do some scribble journaling, you're going to see me wipe my pen off, and that's my way of making sure I don't have any damp paint on there that might clog up the pen. Well, now, since I am working on some wet paint areas here, I'm going to grab what's called a fine liner, and it is filled with some ink. I have a video about fine liners if you're new to them and how they work, and I'm just going to be putting a few dots on here. My plan was to just put a few dots in a couple of the squares, but frankly, it was so much fun to do it, I couldn't stop, and I kept adding more of these. And as I kept going, I realized I was probably going to run out of cute little orange squares to put it in soon. But never fear, I have a solution for that because after I'm done with those orange squares, I'm actually going to go to somewhere else on the page. Somewhere else that does not even have the orange squares. Why be limited by orange squares? So I am just going to put some dots up here, filling in all around. And yet this still hasn't fulfilled my need to put little dots inside on this page, so there are even a few more places I'm going to do it. But not many. I'm almost at the end of my dot makingness here. I'm still going to add a couple more dots, but as this page is just about finished, the play doesn't have to end here. Remember, you can get signed up for my free workshop called Permission to Play over on the blog at A Colorful Journey, as well as get subscribed up for my newsletter with free sparks of artspiration, and you can find out all about those over on the blog too. And of course, hit that subscribe button. That way you'll know as soon as I have another video out. Thanks so much for joining me for today's play and letting me be a part of your colorful journey.